Imagine sitting in church and hearing your own mom whisper, "People like you don't belong here." And then 5 minutes later, the pastor calls your name, and the whole room turns to you. That was me on Christmas morning. And from that day on, my mother never controlled my story again. My name is Caroline. I'm 41 years old. And this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The stained glass windows at Trinity United always looked like fire when the sun hit them just right, like God Himself lit the place up. That morning, they burned gold and crimson. Christmas morning in Savannah, Georgia. 46 degrees outside, breath visible in the air, hot coffee in gloved hands as families filed in. I had picked my seat ahead of time. Fourth row, center aisle. Far enough to not look confrontational, close enough to still matter. I knew exactly what that meant in this church, where people could pretend not to look at you and still keep track of where you were. Mom slid in beside me, tugging her coat tighter. Her hands were trembling a little. Arthritis, maybe. She didn't look at me. The choir was warming up softly. People whispered, hugged. Kids shuffled their feet, bored already. And that's when she leaned in. "Mom, you don't belong here anymore." I turned my head slowly. It felt like my neck had to push through water. "Mom, people like you don't belong in church." She said it like she was telling me the time, not angry, just certain. Then she shifted away, just enough to let her coat sleeve fall between us. A soft but clear divide. A thin line of fabric that suddenly felt like a wall. I didn't say a word. Didn't move. Didn't cry. But something in my throat locked up. My tongue went dry and my chest tightened, like my own body was trying to keep the tears from making a scene. Because I'd known it was coming. I just hadn't expected her to say it out loud. Not here. A couple across the aisle turned toward us. I met their eyes for half a second before they looked away. That was always the thing with her. She didn't need to shout to humiliate you. She just whispered and let the silence do the rest. She knew how to use a room, how to twist it without ever raising her voice. We sat through the hymns. I sang every line. She didn't. My voice came out a little thinner than usual, but it held. She kept her mouth in that tight line I knew too well, the one that meant she was furious and pretending she wasn't. I saw her glance at me sideways when I stood for the readings, when I bowed my head for prayer. I wore the same navy coat I'd had since before the divorce, the same leather gloves she gave me 4 Christmases ago. My hair was pulled back the way she liked, the way she used to say made me look put together. But to her, I wasn't the same. Because now I was the daughter who loved someone she didn't approve of. Because I stopped pretending. Because I had said the words out loud and didn't apologize afterward. She didn't disown me exactly. Too polite for that. She just decided I was no longer welcome. That was cleaner. Easier to explain to herself. I could still sit near her, but not really with her. And she used her favorite weapon to say it. The Lord. The verses she chose, the prayers she prayed out loud where I could hear them, all carried the same message underneath. That quiet exile, that frozen kindness. It stung deeper than if she'd slapped me. At least a slap would have been honest. But I stayed. I stayed through the sermon. I stayed when she wouldn't pass me the offering plate. I stayed when she whispered to the woman behind us like I wasn't even there. The sermon was about grace and second chances. I watched her nod along while sitting inches away from the daughter she had already decided was beyond both. Because I knew something she didn't. This service wasn't going to end the way she thought it would. See, I wasn't just here for closure. I was here for the reckoning. And it was already set in motion. The pastor's wife had called me 3 nights ago, hesitant at first, but then the words came fast. I remember staring at my phone, my thumb hovering over decline for a second before I answered. We've never had someone fund the entire Christmas program before. We're overwhelmed. Would you like to be acknowledged? I said no. The word came out automatically, like a reflex I'd trained into myself. Stay quiet, stay small, don't draw attention. But then I thought of my mom, and what she whispered to me the last time I came out in front of her friends. That look on her face, like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out of the family name. I could still see how quickly she changed the subject, how later she called to tell me I had embarrassed her. And I realized I didn't want revenge. I wanted exposure. I wanted the lie to end. Not just hers, but the one I'd been complicit in for years. Pretending, dimming, folding myself up into something smaller to make her more comfortable. Choosing silence over honesty so she wouldn't have to feel the weight of her own beliefs. This was the last time I was going to fit into the pew she made for me. So I told the pastor's wife, I'll come. I'll sit where she can see me. And if you think it's time, I'll stand when you ask. My voice shook a little, but I meant every word. That was the only line I gave them. No announcement, no bio, no list of donations or causes. Just a moment, a window of truth. And now, the air in the church was shifting. You could feel that end-of-service restlessness starting to settle over the room. People stretching their legs, adjusting scarves, gathering purses and diaper bags at their feet. The final carol ended. People clapped. Babies fussed. Then Pastor Garrison stepped forward, his voice warm, hands folded in front of his chest. Pastor, before we close, there's something important we need to acknowledge today. The room stilled. Even the kids stopped moving. Mom looked up. Her shoulders straightened, and I saw that familiar alertness come over her, the one she always got when attention might land somewhere nearby. Pastor, this year, an anonymous member of our church family did something extraordinary. Because of her generosity, we were able to triple our outreach. He gestured toward the decorated bins at the back, overflowing with coats and canned food. The bright wrapping paper around some of the boxes caught the light and threw little flashes of color against the wall. Pastor, every gift drive, every shelter delivery, every youth program, all of it was funded by one woman. Whispers broke out in every row. Some people shifted forward, curiosity pulling them to the edge of their seats. You could feel the questions moving from person to person without a sound. Mom sat up straighter. I could feel the shift in her breathing. Anticipation, curiosity. That little spark of image management she was famous for. I knew that look. The hope that whatever was about to be praised might somehow be tied to her or to the version of our family she liked to show the world. She glanced sideways at me, but I didn't look back. I kept my eyes on the front of the sanctuary, on the bins I had watched fill up day after day. Pastor, she asked to remain anonymous, but this morning, she gave us her blessing to recognize her. Silence, the kind that feels heavy, like the air has thickened. Then he looked straight at me. Pastor, Caroline, would you please stand? The room turned like a wave. Every eye, every breath. I stood, slowly, my coat whispering against the back of the pew, hands by my side, a quiet strength filling the space she tried to drain from me. For a second, it felt like my whole life had narrowed down to that movement, to the simple act of rising in a room that had already tried to push me out. And then, applause. Long, loud, no music, just hands. The sound rolled over me, warm and strange and a little overwhelming. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood and watched my mother's face fall. Her skin went pale, her lips parted, but no words came. She looked like someone who had just seen a ghost, or worse, herself. The version of her that I had carried in silence for too long, because the woman she tried to erase was the reason half the families in that room had gifts this Christmas. I didn't ruin her, I just stopped protecting her from consequences. And for the first time in years, I felt holy. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. I sat back down slowly. The pew creaked beneath me. Applause still hung in the air like smoke from blown-out candles. Mom didn't move, not even a glance. She kept her eyes locked on the front, hands clasped in her lap, knuckles white. But I saw her throat tighten. Saw the way her mouth worked, like she was chewing a confession she'd never spit out. I didn't need her to speak. That silence? It was louder than any apology she could fake, because in that moment, every carefully crafted illusion she built about me, about who I was, what I'd ruined, it cracked in public. And not because I exposed her, but because I didn't flinch. The service wrapped with a final blessing. Pastor Garrison's voice calm, reverent. Families began filing out, murmuring thanks, grabbing coats, hugging old friends. I didn't rush. I let the crowd thin out. The shuffle of shoes against the tile, the soft squeak of the heavy doors, the rustle of coats and bulletins, all faded one layer at a time. Mom stood up, adjusting her scarf like nothing had happened, like her hands weren't shaking. We stepped into the aisle together, years of habit guiding our bodies, but we didn't speak. We moved in sync and completely out of step. We walked out side by side, but we weren't together. Outside, the cold bit sharp, bright winter sunlight bouncing off the parked cars. The kind of December chill that makes your teeth ache if you breathe too deep. My breath came out in little clouds. Hers did too, two ghosts hanging in the air between us. She turned toward me at the sidewalk. Mom. I didn't know. Her voice was brittle, like she was still trying to sound superior, like if she said it with enough composure, it would erase what she'd done. Me. I know. I didn't say it cruelly. Just flat. Simple. A fact. Not a weapon. She blinked. Her mascara had smudged slightly at the corners of her eyes, just enough for me to notice. Mom, you could have told me? There it was, the accusation tucked inside the hurt, as if her ignorance was my fault. Me. Would it have changed anything? I tilted my head. Let the question hang between us in the cold. She didn't answer. She just clutched her purse tighter, the leather creasing under her fingers. Her wedding ring caught the sun for a second, a brief flash that disappeared as quickly as it came. That's the thing about people like her. They're only sorry when someone else is watching. She wasn't ashamed of what she said in the pew. She was ashamed people knew who she said it to. Ashamed that the daughter she'd tried to push out of the frame had been pulled to the center. We stood there for a long moment. Cars pulled out of the lot around us. Kids shouted as they were bundled into the back seats. The wind stirred the hem of her coat and tugged a loose strand of hair across my cheek. She swallowed once. Hard. Mom, you're still my daughter. The words came out stiff, like a line from a script she felt obligated to read, like she wanted credit for saying it. I looked at her face, at the hard angles of it. The lines carved deeper by decades of judgment, the eyes that had studied me my whole life, not to understand, but to correct. Me. Then act like it. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. I watched the words land on her, saw the slight flinch she tried to hide. For a second I thought she might reach for me. She didn't. I turned and walked away. Didn't look back. My boots clicked against the pavement, each step a small declaration. I could feel the weight of her gaze on my back, heavy and late. Because I'd spent years waiting for her to become someone softer, someone safer, someone capable of seeing me without trying to change me. Years of rehearsing conversations in my head, of imagining apologies that never came. And all it got me was exile in plain sight, the kind where you still get invited to holidays, but your life is the part no one mentions. The kind where your name is spoken, but not your truth. The kind that doesn't leave bruises, just silence. But now I wasn't just the daughter. I was the proof. The proof that compassion doesn't need permission, that grace doesn't come from gatekeepers. My giving had never been about buying acceptance. Not from her, not from the church. And my giving? It wasn't about redemption. It was about reclaiming power on my own terms, saying with my actions that I belonged, whether they believed it or not. Weeks passed after that. Christmas decorations came down. The garlands vanished from the banisters. The nativity scene out front was packed into boxes and carried to the storage closet. The leftover pine needles were swept from the carpets, though a few stubborn ones still hid under pews. January brought cold rain and wet sidewalks, gray skies that made the stained glass windows look softer, muted. People walked faster from their cars to the doors, shoulders hunched against the drizzle. I kept going to church. Every Sunday. Same pew. Sometimes alone, sometimes not. Sometimes I sat with a friend. Sometimes with a woman from the shelter. Sometimes it was just me and the quiet hum of the organ as people shuffled in. And slowly, almost without anyone naming it, the whispers changed. Not because I said anything, not because I defended myself, but because they saw me. They saw me show up. They saw me serve food at the shelter dinners. They saw me stacking chairs after meetings, tying scarves around little kids' necks before they walked out into the cold. The choir director asked if I'd consider sponsoring the spring concert. His voice was cautious, like he wasn't sure if he was crossing a line. One of the deacons invited me to a fundraiser. He stumbled over the word partner when he mentioned guest tickets, then flushed and looked away. I gave him an easy smile. I was tired of punishing people for trying. A single mom stopped me in the parking lot one Sunday, eyes misty, her toddler clinging to her leg, another kid tugging at her sleeve. She cleared her throat, voice rough. Single mom. My kids. They got coats because of that donor. I just wanted to say thank you. Me. It wasn't a donation. It was a decision. The words surprised even me, but they felt true. She hugged me, tight, like she needed it more than I did. Her coat smelled like laundry detergent and fries. And in that moment, I realized something no one ever taught me growing up. God doesn't live in pews. He lives in choices, in the decision to show up again after being pushed away, in the choice to give without asking whether someone deserves it, in the quiet courage it takes to stay soft in a place that tried to harden you. And I chose to stay, even when they didn't make room for me, especially then, because survival is quiet, but so is dignity. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't call her out by name. I didn't burn anything down. I just made it impossible for her to pretend I didn't matter. By standing. By staying. By refusing to fold myself back into the smaller version of me she preferred. And for someone like my mother, someone who built her identity on being seen as righteous and right, that's the worst punishment of all. I started getting calls from other women. Quiet voices cracking open over late-night conversations and quick chats in parking lots. She said the same to me. My family did too. I stopped going. I thought maybe I really didn't belong. Every time I heard it, something sharp loosened inside me. A knot that had rested under my ribs for years began to unkink, because silence is contagious. But so is truth. And the more I spoke up, the more I stopped editing myself. The more I let myself be seen, the more space they found to step into the light. A girl from choir, maybe 12, maybe 13, brought me a handmade card one Sunday. The paper was bent at one corner, scribbled in glitter pen on the front, in big looping letters. I want to be like you when I grow up. She blushed when she handed it to me, eyes darting from my face to the floor. Girl, you, you don't leave, even when people are mean. My mom says that takes strength. I swallowed hard. My throat burned. Me. Your mom's right. And so are you. You already have that strength, you know. She smiled, quick and bright, then ran off to join her friends, ponytail swinging behind her. And I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was legacy, not the one my mother tried to pass down, the legacy of fear and control and silence, but the one I built myself. A legacy of staying, of giving, of standing without shrinking. If she couldn't see me as worthy, that was her loss. But the church saw me, the community saw me, and most importantly, I saw myself. I saw the woman who kept showing up, who chose compassion over bitterness, who stopped waiting for permission to belong. I never changed to fit back into her story. I rewrote the ending instead. It was Easter when she tried to come back. Not to me. She never did that. But to the version of me she thought she could still manage. The air that morning had that strange mix of spring and leftover winter. Cool in the shade, warm wherever the sun managed to land. The neighborhood was quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the hum of distant lawnmowers and the faint echo of kids laughing 2 streets over. I could smell cut grass drifting in through a cracked window and the faint sweetness of the lilies a church member had dropped off for my table. I was in the kitchen, rinsing a mug, when I heard the knock. 3 short taps. Familiar. Rhythmic. The same pattern I grew up hearing at bedroom doors, at bathroom doors, at my college apartment that one time she arrived unannounced. She showed up at my door with a lemon cake, wrapped in foil, warm dish towel over her arm like old times, the kind of gesture she would use when she wanted to pretend nothing ever happened. I remember that cake from childhood holidays, from Sundays when she wanted to make peace without saying the word sorry, sugar, citrus, soft crumb, a language all its own. This time, it did not feel like comfort. It felt like strategy. She did not call ahead, just knocked. Like the last conversation we had did not freeze the air between us. Like she could step back into my life the way she stepped onto our old church stage for choir performances. Smiling, composed, already forgiven. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked slowly to the door. My heart was steady, not racing, just heavy, prepared. I opened the door, slowly. She stood there on my porch, coat open, hair fixed, lipstick carefully applied in a shade that said respectable and planned. The sun caught the lines around her mouth, lines etched deeper since Christmas. Mom, I baked your favorite. Her smile was brittle, too polite, the kind of smile she used with strangers she wanted something from. I could smell the sugar and citrus, warm and sharp under the foil. It hit a part of my memory that still remembered scraped knees at the kitchen table and slices of cake on chipped plates. Familiar, but it did not comfort me anymore. It just reminded me how often sweetness had been used to cover over harm. Me. Thanks. My voice was even, neutral. I kept my hand on the doorframe. I did not invite her in. Her eyes flicked past me for a second. A small scan of my living room, the couch, the side table, the pair of shoes by the door that did not belong to her version of my life. She noticed. She always noticed. She just did not acknowledge. She waited, shifted the dish from one hand to the other. The towel slid a little, and I saw the golden surface of the cake pressed against the foil. A perfect circle. No piece missing. Then finally she asked, her voice tight, a little forced. Mom, are you still going to church? There it was. Not how are you, Not can we talk? Not, I have been thinking about what I said. Straight to the institution, the image, the thing that mattered most to how she was seen. Me. Every Sunday. I let the words sit between us. I did not add details, did not soften it with a laugh, or mention the sermon series or the new outreach program. I wanted her to sit with the fact that I was still there, still standing in a place she hoped would spit me out. Her mouth twitched, a small movement that almost turned into a frown before she smoothed it over. Mom, I have been meaning to come back. Maybe I will see you there. I held her gaze. Me. You saw me last time. Her eyes flickered. For a second she looked like she might flinch. Like the memory of that Christmas morning, of her words in the pew and my standing in front of everyone, had flashed through her mind in full color. Silence followed. No apology, no admission. Just that cake, sweating in the foil between us. Mom, people talk. I have been hearing things. Her voice lowered on that last word. Not in a conspiratorial way, more like a warning. People talk. As if that had always been her guiding star. Not what is right, not what is loving, just what people say. Me. Good things, I hope. I kept my tone light, but my eyes did not move from hers. She blinked, caught. Her fingers adjusted their grip on the dish. She was still trying to figure out how to balance the shame with the control. How to manage the fact that the daughter she tried to shrink had become someone the church now admired. Mom, you have made quite a name for yourself. She paused around the word name. There was bitterness under the smile, a hint of resentment that what she used to control had slipped from her hands. Me. It is my name. I did not flinch. Me. And I finally stopped letting anyone else write it for me. The air between us cooled another few degrees. It was not the weather. It was the truth. She looked down. The pause stretched. I could hear a car door slam somewhere down the street. A bird calling from the tree over my driveway. Small sounds filling the space where her apology should have lived. Mom, you always had to make a point. There it was again. The reframing. Turn my survival into stubbornness. Turn my boundaries into rebellion. Me. No. I always had to survive your version of love. That landed. I saw it. Her fingers clenched the towel. The knuckles went pale. She swallowed once, the muscles in her throat working harder than they should have for such a small act. She did not argue, did not defend. For once, she did not launch into scripture or reputation or how hard she worked to raise us. She just held the cake out, a peace offering wrapped in decades of silence. I looked at it for a moment, at the foil creased around the edges of the pan, at the towel she chose, the one embroidered with yellow flowers like the ones in the yard of my childhood home. I took it. Because I am not cruel, because forgiveness and access are not the same thing. But I did not offer her more than that. No invitation to sit at my table, no promise to meet her in the same story we used to tell about ourselves. She left without stepping inside. She turned, walked down the 2 steps of my porch, and did not look back. Her shoulders were squared, her posture still rigid. Her shadow stretched long across my driveway in the Easter light. And that told me everything. Some people do not want to heal. They just want the appearance of reconciliation. A quiet mending that lets them go back to pretending. So they can tell their friends everything is fine now. We are close again. We moved past it, without ever touching the wound. But me, I do not do pretending anymore. I closed the door gently, set the cake on the counter, took a breath. The house felt still and solid around me. Mine, not a stage for her performance. Later that day, I walked into that church. The same one I had walked into on Christmas. The same one where she told me I did not belong. I walk into that church every week now. The same pew, the same stained glass catching the morning light. When the sun hits those windows just right, the colors spill across the walls and floors like water. Reds, blues, golds painting the faces of people who used to avoid my eyes. Now they nod when I pass, smile, some even stop to talk. People nod now, smile, ask about my week. Some ask about the projects I am working on. Some tell me about a neighbor who might need help. Sometimes they lean in like I am not a scandal anymore, but a resource. Not because I stood up that one time, but because I stayed. That is what cracked everything open. Not the applause, not the title, not the money. The fact that I stood in truth and stayed. I did not run when it got uncomfortable. I did not disappear when whispers started. I did not shrink myself to make the discomfort of others easier to bear. The woman my mother tried to erase is now the one this community calls when someone's house floods, when a child needs a backpack, when a single dad cannot afford shoes for Easter. My phone buzzes with numbers that used to only call my mother. Now they ask for me. Hey, Caroline, do you know any resources for this family? Caroline, we heard you helped with the shelter drive. Can we loop you in? Caroline, can you meet with this teen who feels alone? I do not tell them my full story. I do not sit them down and unfold every detail of what it costs to stand where I do. I do not have to. It is in how I show up, how I give, how I stay soft even when the world tried to harden me. It is in the way I listen to the woman crying in the back row without rushing to fix her. In the way I slip a gift card into the hand of a man who would never ask for help. In the way I make room on the pew beside me for the person who looks like they are not sure they belong. She has not said those words again. You do not belong here. We have seen each other in the sanctuary a few times since Easter. Quick glances across rows. Careful nods. She keeps her comments to weather and music and the length of the sermon. But I know she still believes it, in some corner of her heart, that there is a right way to love, a right way to live, and that I missed it. And that is fine, because I am no longer trying to earn her belonging. I built my own. I built it in every check I wrote without attaching conditions, in every yes I gave when someone needed help, and there was no applause waiting for me at the end. In every Sunday, I chose to sit where I had been told I did not belong and let my presence itself be the answer. And now, when people talk about the heart of our church, when they talk about who shows up, who gives, who quietly holds things together when they are falling apart, they do not say her name. They talk about me. They talk about the woman who stayed after they made it clear they were not sure if they wanted her. The woman who gave without demanding they change first. The woman who refused to let shame write the final chapter. They do not know what I gave up to be here. What I lost. What I had to let die. They do not know what it feels like to stand in a sanctuary that once felt like home and hear your own mother say, "You do not belong." They do not know the nights I spent wondering if she was right. If maybe God had a problem with me too. But I do. I remember every word, every look, every moment I almost walked away for good. And that is enough. She smiled like I was the joke, like my life, my choices, my love, were all some tragic punchline told at her expense. I made sure I was the punchline instead, the one people remember not because it hurt, but because it revealed something true. This story. She tried to steal it, tried to edit it to fit her version of righteousness and order, tried to write me as the cautionary tale. I just rewrote the ending. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.